Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I'm your host, Al Richards. And I'm full of it, man. I got a ton of energy today because our first show was flippin' awesome. We had Mary Jo on the show from USARA, and she just kicked some butt. She gave a lot of great information, and I've also got a lot of energy because we actually have another person from the Other Side of Academy, another friend who I know, we're friends already. You're my brother. I love interviewing people from the Other Side of Academy. So, John, thank you so much for being here, man. Greatly appreciate it.
Of course. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. I just want to say thank you, Robin, because Robin's the one that's hooking me up with everyone. So she's amazing.
She is amazing. She does a lot of work for us.
Yep. She does. Well, and everyone there, I don't think I've met one person from TASA that I don't like. I just immediately we build a relationship. It's just awesome. Thank you. Everyone over there is just incredible human beings, and I'm very blessed and honored just to get to know all you guys. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
And I was driving in the studio today, and I'm like, man, we need a guest co-host, and something kept telling me, Bill. Well, so I gave Bill a call. He answered the second ring, and he's like, hey, brother, what's up? And what are you doing? He starts telling me what he's been up to, and he's like, yeah, I got pretty much an open schedule. I'm like, really? So my good brother here, Bill Schaffenhauer, is here today with us. Join us. Thanks, Bill, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. He actually called me and said, I need an ugly Vanna White. Would you be available? And I was like, yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Anytime.
That's a true story, but I just told him to leave his damn wig home. I didn't want his wig here. Oh, that's a good one. I love it. Again, guys, man, it's just an honor to have both you guys in the studio with us today. So definitely looking forward to interviewing you. John, I was telling you all the people that we've interviewed from TOSA, and I know you're just going to be another awesome story. Now, you grew up here in Salt Lake, right? But more kind of in Salt Lake County area? Is that correct?
More Utah County.
Utah County. Okay.
Provo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Nothing happens down in Utah County. Come on.
Happy Valley.
Right?
Well, nothing happens because no one wants to talk about it, right?
You never know what goes behind closed doors.
Yeah. So, born, raised, all in that same area there?
Yep. My family still lives my parents still live in that same house. So they've been there for 30-something years. But yeah, I was born and raised there. So even went to Provo High. I started out at Westridge Elementary, right up on the hill there, Grandview Hill, Dixon Middle School, then Provo High.
Huh. And what was your family life like? A pretty good family?
Yes. It's funny when people met me down the road, they would always, met me and then met my family, they'd always think what happened to you?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
Great childhood. I still, I stand by that. I was LDS growing up.
Mm-hmm.
My family still is. And I just remember a lot of good times with my family growing up there. A lot of family trips. We did a lot of driving trips. We drove all the way to New York, which took a week and a half once.
Jeez almighty.
And it was something that I loved, and I remember to this day. My dad bought a cabin when I was about 8, so I feel like we spent the whole summer there every summer. Yeah, beautiful childhood.
And the reason why I asked that question is because I want our listeners to know, and a lot of them who follow us quite a bit have heard me say this a lot, addiction doesn't discriminate.
No.
We've had people come on the show who grew up in gangs from LA. Robert was one of them, right? Robert kind of grew up in the gang family and doing drugs at a very young age, with his parents, and thought it was cool to get in trouble and go to prison, right? You were a man. And then we've had people like yourself who grew up from an LDS family, a very lovable family. Gosh, we just had a guy on the show that I met out at Recovery Day, Ronnie Hernandez, who grew up in LA and came from the gangs and running drugs from Utah to California, and it wasn't in any kind of religion. And then his mom moved up here from California and met an LDS family, and they got into the church, and he kind of this family kind of took him in, and now he served a mission, and this was after all his drug running and trouble. And so I like people when they talk about that, because again, I think the majority of the individuals outside of these walls and recovery walls, that stigma of addiction, that people just wake up one day and decide they're going to be an addict, right? And it doesn't work that way. I mean, seriously, right? I mean, that's what you think. You think it, and it's. I want frickin' people to realize it's not the drugs and the alcohol or whatever. It's just the Band-Aid. There's something that's suffering inside. They're just using that to numb themselves out, you know. And I know that for a fact, because I just recently shared my story about my 8-year weekend alcohol and cocaine use for 8 years straight, every frickin' weekend, every Friday and Saturday night, like clockwork.
It's like your family home evening.
It was my family home evening, you know, and that was my release from my stressful job. So
Weekend
again,
warrior.
it wasn't really the substance. It was just, that was my Band-Aid, man, to chill myself out, to I don't know, make myself feel better because of all the stress that I was going through. So yeah. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that you brought that up, that, you know, you came from a very loving family, because a lot of people think too that people who get into addiction come from a broken family, and that's not true.
No, loving family. I pushed them away in every way possible, you know, later on in my life. Again, I have all those great memories of growing up. It was awesome, you know. I was the second youngest of 5 kids, and I had 2 brothers and 2 sisters, so it was kind of balanced. But me being the second youngest, I feel like I got picked on a lot by my older siblings. But even then, it was just all love and games, you know. I feel like for me, and it's funny because I, you know, since you emailed me about doing this, you know, I've been kind of replaying my life through my head and thinking about things and trying to psychoanalyze things, and you know, from a really, really young age, I developed you know, the behavior of being sneaky even way before drugs. And I remember nights, my room was downstairs, me and my little brother's room, and after everybody would go to sleep, I would sneak out, and my parents would still be awake, and their room was right down the hallway. And I remember like putting my ear up against their door, listening, and I was young, like 7, 8 years old, and
ninja.
It was fun to me at the time,
right?
You know, especially knowing things that they didn't want my other siblings to know.
Yeah, right.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, you know, and it's crazy. I mean, did that kind of like start you down the wrong path from sneaking out and just hooking up with the wrong people? I mean, or did something happen in your life too that you're kind of like, I'm just going to go this direction, or the curiosity? We hear that a lot. It was the curiosity that our parents said, oh, don't ever do this. And you're like, well, why not? I got other friends that are doing it, and they seem to be okay, right?
Yeah, I think it was the curiosity. Especially, you know, in grade school, they did the DARE program.
Yeah.
And they said all these things would happen to you if you did drugs. And my parents said the same thing. And yeah, just being curious. I think I dabbled, and every time I dabbled, nothing bad happened.
Right.
Right.
Oh, that was a great result. Let's try that again.
Yeah. So I just kept going, you know.
I mean, it's actually kind of interesting too. Like, you know, when I think about my story, right? I came from a drug addicted life, homelessness, 17 foster homes. I watched my family, my mom and my stepdad and their friends shoot up all the time and pass out. And like for me as a youth, that freaked me out. Like just the whole thought of like the needle and all that and the passing out and all the things that went wrong. And so that's kind of what sent me in a different direction, obviously, to pursue, you know, being successful in the things I do, coach, Olympian, business guy. But, you know, we talked about like, you know, addiction will take on all clients.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
It's a great salesman.
You know, it totally is a great salesman. You know, when, you know, after I retired from the Olympics in 2010, and that's when I started having my problems. Mm-hmm. But the problem was, first off, it was mostly like the alcohol. And, you know, I religiously go to AA, so Kirsten and I both go to AA on twice a week.
Well, that's something I didn't know.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Wow,
but,
all right.
But when I talk in AA classes, you hear all these other stories, and I'm like, my story is different because we used alcohol as an athlete as a celebration. Mm-hmm. I referred to a time where we were at the 2003, I think it was the 2003 World Championships in Germany, and before the race, we knew we were going to win, first, second, or third. So they piled bottles of alcohol in a big duffel bag and made sure it was with us. Like, as soon as we crossed the line, they opened the bag and started handing people bottles. So for me, that was like normal. But when I retired and had the issues with depression and all that stuff, it switched from like the celebration to the need, right?
Yeah.
And
the
then
numbness.
What's interesting about the curiosity is that's when I started getting curious about why my mom and my life with my mom was the way it was. And I was like, okay, what was it really that made her choose, the addictions of meth and coke and drugs and all of that street life over her family?
Yeah.
And that's when I started like, well, I'm going to try. And I was already smoking weed. I've smoked weed since I was a little kid. But I was like, I'm going to try coke one time while I was drinking. And I was like, oh, wow.
Same thing I did.
This is a cool place right here.
Yeah.
But then then you started getting in those circles, right? And then it started becoming a challenge where my friends were like, oh, hey, you're the Olympian. I bet you can't do drink, coke, acid, and this. Sure, let's do it all. And I just remember several times of just not sleeping literally for days. And it's just, I never shared that stuff with people, but it was the combination of the curiosity. And we actually used alcohol as a celebration in athletics.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think it also kicked in the Superman effect for you.
Oh,
Yeah. I can relate with that. I feel like when I was curious and I was starting, and then people kept saying this will happen to you, or this is what happens when you use, and I kept thinking, no. Not
what
me.
Are you talking about? Yeah. I'm turned me into a man of steel. Confidence and everything.
Yeah, just like you. Like I can do, meth, heroin, cocaine, drink, smoke some weed all in one night. I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
Well, especially with the drinking part, right? Because I had someone ask me that last week. They're like, why the alcohol and the coke? And it's like, well, because you're drinking and you start getting to where you're really getting a buzz, and you're like, man, I don't want to get that freaking drunk. So you do a couple lines of coke, and pretty soon you're leveled right back out. But then if you do a little bit too much of the white stuff, then you're like, and it's like, oh, I got to bring myself. Then you start drinking more. So I says, all night long, you're doing this,
Yeah.
One thing that I have really, really picked up on over the 100 shows that we have done, it seems like people's addiction they start dabbling right around the age of puberty. It usually starts between 11 and 14 years of age. Our youngest one started drinking at 5 years old. Mm-hmm. He was a full-blown alcoholic by junior high. Because he's just like, I just fell in love with alcohol. I just loved the frickin' taste. He says, basically, it wasn't that I was numbing myself. I just frickin' loved the taste of alcohol. Was it the same with you, just kind of like right into that age group?
No, I was a little bit more of a late bloomer. I feel like I started smoking weed when I was 16, and the harder drugs came into play when I was 18. But even before that, like we talk about, that was the Band-Aid. Before that, I mentioned the sneaky behavior of sneaking out. I started sneaking out of the house. And I'll tell you, like, I hated confrontation. I hated hard things, and so I learned to lie to get out of the situations 8 or 9 years old. And again, I think that's what eventually led me to it was those behaviors. So sneaking out, lying, telling my family stories. I remember there would be arguments between my parents and my older siblings, and I remember thinking, like, this is crazy. I'm not going to do that. So let's say I came home late one day, and immediately I would just tell them what they wanted to hear because I didn't want to deal with it.
Isn't it crazy how that happens? Because I was the same way. I had a dad that I got my freaking ass kicked a lot. And my mom didn't even realize how many times I got my ass kicked till I started sharing some stuff with her. And at a young age, I got the same way. I got to be a really good liar and manipulator. And I mean, you could put me right on the spot and it came out like it was the truth. I mean, that's how good I got at it. The unfortunate part about that, I took it into my adulthood. You know, even when I lost my job in 2009, I had some people come up that were my friends, and two of them came up and said, man, you know, it sucks what happened to you and that, but, you know, we never trusted you. And I'm like, what? What do you mean you didn't trust me? I never stole from you or anything. That's how I was looking at it. I always respected you. We were at kids' births and birthday parties and I mean, we hung out, we partied together and that. It's like, no, you can never believe you. You know, you would lie and you manipulate people to get what it was that you want.
Yeah.
That for me was like spreading my legs and going, take your shot. Seriously, it freaking hurt.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, my hell, is that the person that I have become? And it started just like you. I don't know if it was 8 or 9 years old, but it started at a young age, not even realizing it. I perfected it, took it all into my teenage years, my early adult years, not even realizing it took me, I was 45 or 44 when I lost my job.
Yeah.
I was still that age and still lying and manipulating, not even really, it was like it was nothing, not even realizing I was doing it, right?
Well, and the worst part, you're lying and manipulating to yourself. More than anybody, right?
Exactly.
And you think that everyone believes your bullshit.
Yeah.
And you go through this life thinking, oh, hey, I'm really good at lying, and people are believing me. And the reality, they're sitting back going, what is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
Right?
Kind of like what addicts do, right?
Yeah,
100%. My wife would sit there, I'm like, you're drinking, huh? And she's like, no, I'm not. It's like, yes, you are. No, I'm not. You know? I mean, seriously, because to them, they're not.
Yeah.
Right? And they're going to do everything they can to make you believe that.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
That's interesting. Like, for me, mine was very different because as a kid, before I was even in school, you know, I'll be right in line with the guy you talked about was 5 or 6 or whatever. I used to sit around with my parents and drink and smoke drugs and do drugs all the time, and that was normal.
Yeah.
That was my normal life.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up being totally fine with just telling the truth, like, and it was okay.
Right.
but the problem
didn't have to hide it.
Yeah, the problem is what I ended up becoming really good at is being the chameleon in every arena, you know. And so I could go and have meetings with high level CEOs and be totally normal and do the stupid stuff you see there, and then I could go hang out with my lower level friends and rock star with them, and you know, I created this architecture of life where it served me and only me.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you could fit in with any crowd, but you didn't really know who you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, I think Dylan, who was on the show, basically said that's what he was, a chameleon and a very good one. Mm-hmm. He could put him in a room anywhere and he'd fit right in. You didn't even know he was out of the crowd.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that happens to a lot of us that fall in that realm, you know, and yeah, a lot of us don't even realize it's happening.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Well, it's just like you talked about when you were 40-something. I didn't realize I had a problem until, you know, when I made my transition, which was like 2018, 2019, which most people would be like, oh my gosh, what was your life like before that? I was like, oh, well, I went to 3 Olympics. I won a silver medal. I was successful. I have every award that you could achieve and win as an athlete, and some in business and community and stuff like that. And I was, you know, now when I look back and I reflect, those are the things that actually can help me continue to strive to push even more. Because I'm like, if I did all this amazing stuff, being an alcoholic addict, depressed, suicidal guy, what could I do if what could I do if I straighten my life out?
Yeah.
Which where I'm at now. Like when you call,
yeah,
like, what are you doing? I'm like, whatever I want to do. I
got my open schedule.
Yeah, I got an open schedule. Like, you know, I had a client from Hungary. I talked to my 2 business partners about how, you know, our companies are launching, and you know, they'll within the next 5 years they'll both be billion-dollar companies, and it goes back to that, what keeps me in line, right? Because people always ask that question, right? So, you know, since you were an alcoholic and an addict, like when you got clean, like, do you ever have those cravings, or are you just good now? I'm like, oh no, don't get me wrong. Like, I think about that stuff all the time. Hence the whole AA, like keeping us on point. Yeah. And, you know, as a coach and a mentor, we always talk about, you know, surround yourself with people who are influential to support you, right? And so in my head, I'm like, I'm just applying all that stuff to every aspect of my life. Hence, going to AA, I'm around other people that are dealing with the same thing that helps remind me multiple times a week to stay on the right track and stay up on the path.
Yeah, but it's also why you stay so busy. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same. You know, we talk about at the Other Side Academy, you know, take that black hat off and put the white hat on, because if you think about our addictions, we spent so much time and energy, and we would figure it out if we wanted to. If we wanted to get high, we would figure it out.
Oh yeah.
Take all that time and energy and put it towards, you know, what we're doing nowadays, and what's going to stop us?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When did you realize, John, that your life was actually spiraling out of control? When you didn't have any control of it anymore.
This is always a great question. I love when people ask me the same thing. I'm like,
I got you.
It's interesting to think about. Like, I feel like there were times where I got like really hooked bad, clean, really hooked bad, clean, and I would feel like every time I was really hooked bad and life got horrible, part of me wanted to do something different, but at that point, even though I grew up in this great family, I was just so, from choosing to do it, to live that way, I was so used to it, so it was comfortable now, you know, after running away from everything. And every time I wanted to do something different, I just didn't really know how. So I would say, man, I got to the Other Side Academy in 2016, and it was probably 4 years before that before I started to want something different. I knew my life sucked. You know, I was in and out of jail at that point over and over and over again. So,
Now, was it just because of the drugs, or did you start doing the crimes? Because I know a lot of people that we've interviewed, they started going, I mean, when you're under the influence, you don't definitely think right? That's why they say a lot of criminals are dumb criminals, because their brains aren't working the proper way, right?
Yeah, I became a horrible thief, you know, and a lot of it was just from my family. Bless them, you know.
Yeah.
And my thing was pawning stuff. And what originally led me to jail over and over again was friends' parents calling the cops because their stuff would go missing, and my name's on the ticket at the pawn shop, so, you know, charge here, charge there, and
Wow.
yeah.
Man, I just couldn't imagine living a life like that. But again, addiction takes us there. You know, I was very fortunate in a way that I was so into my work. It kept me, because I was working 13, 14 hours a day, except for Fridays. 8 hours, man. Then right at 3 o'clock, I'm calling my dealer. Where can we hook up?
Wow.
You know, because I'm ready to go home and frickin' party. And so I was very lucky that way. But also, well, and again, I have to say this was luck too, because that's how I ended up losing my job, a failed drug test. I hadn't been drug tested in 15 years. All of a sudden one day I get popped for a drug test. I'm like, huh? What? Oh shit. You know? And but in a way, again too, it was still a blessing, because it took me out of that environment that I knew I was getting in deep. You know, I've shared the story that we used to have friends come over, family come over, and we had the house, and I had the man cave out in the garage, the dartboard, TV, stereo, fridge full of frickin' booze. You know, we'd go out and play darts till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm snorting my coke. My wife has no idea I'm doing it. She doesn't even understand how I could drink as much as I'm drinking and still be standing up.
Yeah.
Because I was leveling myself off, right? And I remember we were playing cards one time, and I went into our master bathroom to go to the bathroom, and I mean, I just boom, and down I went right in the frickin' tub, tore the shower curtain off, and my wife and her friends come running in the bathroom, and I'm still there holding my junk, sitting in the tub, my feet over the tub, and they're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I remember looking in the mirror later on that night, just asking God, man, help me, because I'm not in a good spot right now. Yeah. Even though I'm doing this shit 2 days a week, which I think is cool, I'm not an addict because I'm only doing it 2 days a week. Mm-hmm. Everything's cool. I was up to 198 pounds. Most I've ever weighed my whole freaking life, 198 pounds. And when I saw our wedding pictures, I'm like, frick, I look like a pregnant cow in a tux. I mean, seriously, I had a double chin.
It's all those beer calories.
Yeah, it's all the beer, because I drank a lot of beer back in those days. I mean, pretty much that's what I was drinking. I'd have a 12-pack in me before my wife would get home.
Yeah.
She'd get home at 5, and I was leaving at 3. I'd go home and snort a couple lines, pop the beer, crank up the stereo, go out and do my yard work, going around like crazy, and yeah, I'd already polish off a 12-pack by the time she got home.
Isn't it interesting, like, when you think about, like, obviously we should consume more water, right?
Yeah.
Could you imagine sitting down and consuming 12-ounce cups of water? No. Not at all, right?
No. Well, it wouldn't level you off, right?
Yeah. But it's interesting, that question that Al asked you about, like, when you realized you wanted something else, because that's a very different question than asking, when did you realize you were at your worst point? Like, what were some of those things? Like, for me, like, I can tell you, it was when I had looked in the mirror and I started having this conversation with myself, and I finally saw this other person, and I was like, who's this dude?
Yeah.
And I was like, reflecting, like, what does your life look like right now? You've isolated, you have no friends, you just retired, you should be living the life as a 3-time Olympian, Olympic champion, just got all these awards, but you've now isolated yourself. Mm-hmm. I've got a puppy and 2 cats. I have no friends. Well, I do have friends, but you know what kind of friends I'm talking about.
Accomplices.
Yeah. And I couldn't hold a relationship with my kids, anyone I dated. I couldn't hold a relationship with myself. I lied to myself. 3 felony DUIs, 2 aggravated assaults with deadly weapons. Judge is like, one more, any stupid thing, and you're done.
Yeah.
And I was just like, when I was reflecting in the mirror, I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, how did you create this space for yourself? And, when I was borderline told that I was going downtown, if I did anything again, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
I got to figure something else here. So for you, what was, like, the lowest point? Like, what did you do to...
Man, I have this really vivid memory. And it was actually before I started going to prison. Again, I was so comfortable with the lifestyle, I just stayed in it even after this happened. But I was living with my parents again, move out, move back, move out, move back. And I had just been up for a few days and at a buddy's house. Went back to my parents, went down to my basement room. Buddy called me, said, hey, I just picked up, you want to hang out? I'm like, of course, let's go.
Yeah.
And
stupid question.
Come on, bro.
Yeah. And I came running up, and I was trying to, again, not wanting to be confronted by my mom, and I knew I looked like shit. I came running up the stairs, turned the corner, went to head towards the front door, and I think I was like holding my breath because I was trying to be sneaky at the same time.
They can't smell it.
Yeah. And I just kind of passed out. I remember waking up and my mom's like shaking me.
Oh, man.
And she just has this look of fear in her eyes. And I remember that. And that's when I'm like, man, this is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, too, that a lot of people that battle their addiction don't realize the harm that they're doing on the other side. Because I remember when my wife started losing jobs because she couldn't keep a job because she was freaking drunk or calling in all the time. And, of course, when she's calling in, she's slurring her words, so they know she's freaking drunk.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's not harming you. I'm not hurting you. Mm-hmm. It's like, how the hell do you figure that? I need you to work to help me with things. I can't pay all these bills on my own. I need your assistance. Mm-hmm. But again, that's the mentality that you get in, right? I mean, you don't pay it. Again, we get selfish. All we give a shit about is ourselves, where we want to go, what we want to do, what we want to use.
Megalomaniacs.
Yeah.
Master manipulators.
Yeah, we don't think of the harm that we're doing. Yeah. And then when you get in deep and you start losing those relationships, then you're like, I've lost everything. My wife told me every time, I'm about ready to lose you. I've lost my kids. No one will talk to me. My sisters, my brothers. I'll never get it back, right? And then you start falling into this pity party, basically, which causes us to start using more because we want to self-medicate because we don't like the way that we feel, thinking it's going to help us, which makes things worse.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Poor me.
Victim mentality.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And when you think about it, it was our fault. Each of our faults. I remember my interview for the Other Side Academy. I went into it like that. Like I've lost everything. My family's done with me. Poor me. And Dave told me bluntly, like, can you blame him?
Right.
It's your fault. It didn't really hit me.
Oh, absolutely.
Again, those lies we tell ourselves that we end up believing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I remember clearly. I had a lot of moments like I talked to you about where, multiple blackouts. I mean, I can't even count how many blackouts I had. And, there was this one time where, because I wasn't spending a whole lot of time with my kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one time I told my son, I got mad. And I was like, dude, it's your mom's fault that we don't spend enough time together. And my 15-year-old son, looked at me and he's like, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
It's not my mom's fault. It's your fault. And that was a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah. Spread your legs, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this is a good chance here to take a quick commercial break. When I was looking at your bio, John, you said something about doing the hard and the right thing was the same. And I freaking love that. That has so much meaning behind it. So I'd like to kind of touch base on that when we come back from the commercial, if that's cool.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, awesome. Hey, guys, we'll be right back.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Do you know someone who's gambling with death due to an addiction? Do you know someone whose life is being turned upside down due to a loved one that's battling with addiction? Hi, I'm Al Richards. I am the host of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I started the podcast due to my wife's battle with alcohol. Let's just say I became addicted to her addiction. Our podcast is helping people understand a little more about those who have battled addiction and those who are hurting from their addiction. Through raw vulnerability, we share stories that help uncover the root causes of addiction. Shame felt on both sides, matter of the conscious and subconscious mind, continued beliefs, and often confusing paths of recovery. We collaborate with real people and their stories, as well as licensed professionals, to help our audience gain a better understanding of addiction. You can find us on Resilience Talk Network. You can also find us on Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. That's Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Other Side of Addiction. Yeah, I'm glad we're not in tears.
Somebody needs to like record like the off-air
The
stuff.
bloopers.
Yeah.
Well, we do. It's on the board. So yeah, we're talking about doing a file of bloopers. That's for sure. So I think Mason's even got a couple of them from some things. But anyway, hey guys, welcome back to the other side of addiction, man. I greatly appreciate it. And again, John and Bill, thank you guys for being here with me today, man.
Of course.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have both you guys here. And I loved where the first part of the show went. I don't think I've ever done a show where I was disappointed where the first part of the show. I mean, I used to say phenomenal all the time. I finally got myself out of it. But again, all our shows have just been phenomenal. Our guests are incredible. Our guest co-hosts are incredible. So much insight. And I love how everyone in the room gets vulnerable. You know, we're all talking. And I really do believe that even for our guests that come in who are vulnerable and they're sharing a part of their story in their life that they're not proud of, but to see where they're at today and to hear the people that are sitting in this room with them do the same damn thing, it goes to tell our listeners, man, you think your life's freaking perfect. It's not. If you really start opening your eyes, it's not perfect. And I love when I was reading through your bio, you had a comment saying the doing the hard and the right thing was the same. That hit me pretty hard when I read that, because how that is so freaking true. That is so spot on, right? Because you mentioned it right before the break, Bill, or maybe it was during our break.
Yeah.
that you know, you're talking about where you're at and you're getting ready to check out because your life sucks, and it just didn't happen overnight. It took you time. But when people want to get their life together, they want it to happen right now. Mm-hmm. Like, that's us Americans, right? We want everything at our fingertips ASAP, and when it doesn't happen, we seem to throw in the white flag. It takes us time to dig that frickin' hole, and we dig that hole pretty damn deep. It's going to take us time to put that frickin' dirt back in that hole, right?
Yeah.
So I love that.
Well, and really, like I talked about, for about 4 years, I wanted something different. I just didn't really know how, but it was also because it was hard. I didn't want to do what was hard.
Yeah.
And so I just stayed with, the comfortable stuff. And it really wasn't until I got to the Other Side Academy. So I stayed 3 years, almost 4 years as a student. And it was probably in my third year when it started to click that, everything worth something in life is actually coming from hard work. And that's where that comes from. That's when I started to feel that. And that actually became one of my commitments, was to not take the path of least resistance, which means do hard things, do hard things every day.
Yeah. Well, and it builds your character, right? I mean, it really does. Bill, as an Olympian, you don't become a medal winner by taking the easy way, right? It's freaking hard-ass work, right? I mean, it's hours and hours and hours worth of training and proper diet and of course, coaches to help you, which in recovery, we all need that extra help as well, right? We need someone to reach out and help us get through whatever it is that we're going through. It's not easy all the time. I'm sure there were even days for you where you're like, oh, frick, I'm tired of getting up at 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning and running, and I'm just done. It's like when I first did my first bodybuilding competition, I had to change my diet. Eating 5 times a day, every 2 to 3 hours I had to eat. And I remember the guy that was helping me train, he come up to me about the third day and he goes, how's it going? I'm like, I am so freaking sick of eating. I'm just bloated all the time. I'm like, are you sure this is how you're supposed to do this? He goes, yeah, give it about another 4 or 5 days. Yeah. About 4 or 5 days, comes up to me, how's it going? It's like, frick, I just ate an hour ago and I'm starving, right? The process.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I definitely agree with what you're saying, but I also think at some point in time, or the way I process it and the way I look at it, is that doing the right thing is actually easier than doing the shit that we used to do, because I think, I don't know about you guys, but waking up with a hangover and trying to function the next day sucks balls. And how do I solve that? Yeah. I start drinking again, or using again, or doing something else. And so as I reflect on how my life is now, dude, my life is so simple. And that's what I always try to get people to understand, is like, just simplify it. to simplify your life, right?
Yeah.
And you talk about, like, again, trying to get out of that. You mentioned about everyone here that comes on the show being vulnerable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerability is part of the process to recovery.
Yeah,
Period.
absolutely. With anything, I think, in life.
Oh my gosh,
right? If you want to
absolutely.
advance.
Yeah.
I really think it's one of the main things.
Yeah,
You know,
100%.
you got vulnerability, which kind of opens up the doors to connection, and really connection should be, a definition of disconnection should be a definition of addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people too, like you mentioned, I wanted something better, but I didn't know where to start.
Mm-hmm.
And most people start, or they think they should start, by reaching out to other people, when the reality is you have to start right here.
Yeah. Amen.
You have to go have that conversation with yourself in the mirror, or that conversation with yourself and say, yeah, I'm looking at myself or this person that I thought was me, and I'm saying I want something else. Well, now I'm going to be accountable for myself.
Yeah.
Now I can go to you, and I can go to you and start figuring out what is the game plan and the steps to go about it to get on that road.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, or we wouldn't be sitting
Yeah,
there.
right.
Well, and I agree with you when you say it would be hard to go back, because I tell people that all the time. You know, my life is so good right now, and it's become simple, easy, and it would be hard to go back. I'd have to put in work to go back.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah. Manageable, right? It's much more manageable. I mean, yeah, bad things are still going to happen because that's what life does.
Yeah.
Right? It's constantly throwing us curveballs.
Shit happens.
However, you have a lot more tools in your toolbox or your tool pouch to help you handle those times, right? And I have really also learned a lot from people who are in recovery, have been through recovery. When you finally stop trying your ass off to control your life and just let life happen, shit seems to work out a hell of a lot better. Because I spent years doing my best. I mean, if something wasn't going the way I wanted it to go, I was busting my ass to do everything I could to get it to happen the way I wanted it to happen. Yeah. It took me up until 2-3 years ago to finally start, right around the end of my wife's addiction, where I finally threw my hands up. And for me, my higher power is God going, well, apparently I just keep screwing shit up. So, you know what? I'm just going to do what Carrie Underwood says. Jesus, take the wheel. Let's see how well you can drive. Well, he drives pretty freaking good.
Pretty solid, man.
Yeah, pretty solid.
One thing I tell, so today I'm kind of over some of our graduates, and I kind of mentor them.
Yeah.
You're a life coach, mentor type.
I call it, I'm a leadership legacy coach.
So, yeah.
I like that. I like that title, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of help these guys as they transition outside of the Other Side Academy. And one thing that they always run into is boredom.
Yeah.
And, you talk about just letting Jesus take the wheel, it's the same thing. Like, you just got to be okay with being okay.
Yeah, right.
And part of it is looking yourself in the mirror and being okay with it.
That whole boredom thing is so true, though, right? You think about it, because, I mean, I still deal with it today, right? And there's times where I'll be sitting there and being like, okay, normally, if I'm this bored, I would just go get a drink.
Yeah.
And that's where I would start. Or I'd go to the bar and just, go have my casual social
time.
drink. And I've gotten to the place where I'm comfortable being by myself, being bored by myself.
Yeah, me
right?
too. Yeah.
And it's such, there's so many tools that are out there and available to us. But the interesting part about that, from addicts and alcoholics, is they are, me included, some of the strongest people on this planet. Why? Because we've already gone and put ourselves through all the bullshit and the chaos and the craziness and the addiction, losing our family, going to jail, getting in trouble with the law, all these things, right? We've created this horrible, hard world for ourselves.
Yes.
And now that we're clean and on the right path, we can do anything we want.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and I really love being a mentor, and I think I'm so good at it. Well, not to toot my own horn.
Let's go ahead.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I'm good at it because I've been through it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've been there, done that. I've been that low. I've hurt many, many people. But I put in the work, and now I'm doing something different. And this is what you want, let me help you.
Yeah, that's what makes a great mentor, a great coach, is that you've actually been through it.
Yes.
And you've overcome it, right? And now you can sit down with whoever, and you hear these stories and these experiences and these excuses, and you're like, you know what, I was there, but here, let me show you how I did it.
Yeah.
And see if we can figure out a way it works for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's, especially with the excuses that come up.
Oh my gosh.
Man, I used to say that to myself first and foremost, and then I'd say it to other people, but the truth of it is, you're lying.
Yeah. It's so funny because as a kid, my mom used to watch all those murder mystery shows.
Yeah.
And I still do it today. And I sit there and I listen to these people and when they're being interviewed by the police, and I'm like, oh my, I've heard that story so many times. Like, stop. Stop.
Yeah.
And the next one comes. It's the same excuse as the last one. But,
that's like, I was coming home from NASCAR weekend once in Vegas, and I told my wife I'd be home at a certain time, and she's like, no, you won't. So I'm like, I'm going to prove her wrong. So I just get out of Nephi, and I'm cruising down the highway, and it's like, I don't know, 11:30 at night. I don't know where the hell this highway patrolman was. I didn't see him. Next thing I know, the frickin' blue and reds are on me. I pull over. Cop gets out, comes over to the passenger side. Of course, I roll down the window, and he says, how are you tonight? And I says, I'm well. I says, except you kind of ruined the night a little bit for me. And he goes, you know how fast you were driving? I said, yeah, I think when I looked down, when I first saw your blue lights, I says, I think the speedometer read 99 or 98. And he busted out laughing. And I said, officer, you find that funny? He goes, yeah, because most people will tell me 75. Like, are you shitting me? I said, dude, you got me, man, right? So why should I lie to you? But that's what we do as addicts, do that same thing, right?
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, we're always lying to ourselves, to help ourselves feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I got a question. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, with all the lies that we told ourselves and others, that's kind of what makes life easier today, is because we don't have to remember all the lies.
Yeah.
When you're telling the truth, that's all you have to remember.
Well, the games are over with.
Yeah.
And how much weight is off your back?
Yeah.
Knowing, and this was one big thing for me too, because I was like, I can see a police car and I don't have to worry about it because I'm not driving without my license when it's suspended. I'm on my third DUI. I don't have to go to check in with my PO all the time. I ain't got to do all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I live, for the most part, a simple life with no weight on my back.
Yeah.
Right? And that's one of the most rewarding things for me, because I reflect a lot. I take myself, when I reflect, to those dark places to remind myself why I'm doing what I'm doing now, why I'm where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
For you, like I don't know how long you've been clean, but what do you do for you? Like, do you have any practices or tools that you utilize if you're, in a situation like this Christmas, this holidays? Kirsten and I both love to drink, and we drink a lot, right? And so we actually are really good partners of accountability, which helps us. And we had a big concern as the holidays were coming up, Thanksgiving and Christmas, because that's typically like, it's
party time.
Whatever we're doing, the rules are off. Rules, right? So what are some things that you do that might be best practices for other people out there that
Good
might
question.
be? Yeah.
Well, nowadays I reach out to other people, and sometimes it's not even for me. Sometimes I'll reach out to somebody just to see how they're doing. That almost helps me more.
Right.
In the end. That's the biggest thing. But I married a woman that was with the Other Side Academy too. And so she's like my accountability partner. So
it's funny too, because when I went to AA, in my AA groups, when we first meet some people, they're like, oh, so you guys are together. We're like, yeah. They're like, oh, so you guys need to be really, really careful with that.
Yeah.
Which I get it.
I've heard that, yeah.
But we are literally, we're both cancers, so it's funny, I'm dating the female version of myself. So the accountability for both of us is awesome. And it's, early on when we started getting clean from drinking and stuff, we were like, there would be one day where she's like, oh man, I just really want to drink. I'm like, no, She'd be like, all right. And there'd be another day where like, man, I just want to drink. She'd be like, no.
Yeah.
And fortunately, and by the grace of God, like, we've just been able to work that out that way.
Yeah.
And obviously we're on a much better path too. But that's one thing I do too, because like, believe me, like it's that what do they call it? Kind of like that Superman thing where like when I go to an event, I'm like, oh, everyone else is drinking. Like, oh, I want to have a drink or whatever. But again, for me, I do the same thing. I'll reach out to somebody. It's now Kirsten, right? I'll be like, hey, babe, like I'm really struggling right now. I just want to go out and like rock star with these people. But I also do that because like I have pretty bad chronic depression too. And I made a promise to myself that like when I start going down that rabbit hole, I'll just reach out to somebody. And it doesn't have to be like Kirsten's obviously like my go-to because I'm with her most of the time. But you know, if I was sitting here with Al, I'd be like, hey, dude, you got a second? And it's just a best practice that I think is useful for so many people to. What is your oh shit rule for you? You know, to make sure that you don't fall back into that addiction, alcoholism, or that depression and stuff.
You know, I'll tell you, when I don't want to talk about something, that's when I know that I have to.
Yep.
And I've just kind of made, you know, I built the muscle that anytime I'm like, nope, I'm not going to, okay, hey, what's up? I need to talk. You know, like it's just a muscle for me now.
Yeah.
And those moments, you know, that's what, you know, would kill me.
Yeah.
Is not talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or those,
And I want our listeners to understand too, when you're looking for someone to reach out to talk, right? It's good to have someone in your circle that is there just to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because I made that mistake with my wife throughout her addiction. I mean, she even made the comment to me once, and I've shared this on the show quite a bit. I went and picked her up. She had a weekend, an overnight stay. She was going to Epic. And, you know, she gets in the truck or gets in the car, and we're heading home. Of course, I can't wait to get her home, you know. And she's telling me all this drama and all this crap that went on. And so, you know, therapist Al, I start putting in my shoulds and do this. And she stopped me. And she goes, for once, I just wish you'd be my effing husband instead of my effing therapist.
yeah.
And just let me dump.
Just let her, and again, spread the legs, get me, but I still didn't get it. I still didn't get it because, again, I wasn't really listening to what she was saying, you know, because I'm her husband. I'm going to help her. You don't need that. I'll fix you. I'll take care of you, when I didn't have the tools to do it.
Yeah.
And so I want our listeners to understand, when you do have someone that you need to reach out to, if it's not your partner, right? Because sometimes it's not a good fit with your partners. Talk to someone that will just sit there and listen to you, let you dump, like you said, Bill, and let you get it off your chest, because, man, it does make a world of difference.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge difference.
Well, if you think about it, too, what keeps addicts together? We will sit down and support each other, get high and drunk all day and bullshit and create excuses, and we'll reflect and bounce all that stuff off each other. And that's us dumping on each other, but then we feel supported in that circle, right? So,
well, why do you think some of us pull away from other family members and get in the wrong crowds, right? Because they're listening to me. Oh, they understand. So you end up in that crowd, whether it's a good crowd or a bad crowd.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, right? Just like what you said, the heart is and the right, it's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, choose, I think I've heard Dave DeRocher say this, choose your heart, right? I mean, choose your road. Which road do you want to go down? You want to continue to go down this one that's rough as a son of a bitch, or do you want to go down one that's a little bit smoother?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, really, because any road in life is going to be hard, you know, as hard as you make it. And so, choose your heart.
Yeah, I had a really interesting situation over the last few months when Kirsten and I first started going to AA, and I asked her, I said, hey, are you, like, you really want to commit to this? She's like, yeah. She's like, I don't need it. I know how my life is without this in it. You're here. Great.
Support.
I said, but here, let me prepare you for something. I said, I know that your best friend that you've had for years is also an alcoholic. What I want you to prepare for is that as you start getting clean, you're going to figure out who your real relationships are.
Absolutely.
She's like, no, she's my best friend. She'll be around forever. And sad to report, but I know how it goes, that best friend is no longer in the picture.
Yeah.
Right? And people have to be prepared for those potential changes of things that they feel like they've been so rooted into.
Yeah.
Of their friends, their friends.
Yeah.
Right? And understanding that when you start to make massive life changes, that includes all of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's some people that are just not going to want to come along with their life, and they will make you feel bad because you're changing.
They'll throw the guilt trip on you.
100%.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, but you think about it, like anytime somebody's sticking around you when you're doing the wrong thing over and over again, you see their true colors if you start doing the right thing, you know, if they stick around, you know, just like you're saying.
Oh.
And
dude, when I started like making my transition, like I said, in 2018, 2019, I was like, no, these are my boys, man. And when I stopped blowing $200 to $700 a day at the bar and all that stuff, I was like, whoa, what happened to my boys?
Yeah, right?
all of a sudden a couple seats are empty next to you.
Wait a minute, what happened here?
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
And maybe if you're lucky, you may get one that will pull out of there and go, hey, whatever you need, man, I'm here.
Yeah.
You know, and they'll look out for you.
Yeah. I really only have two people that I talk to from my past.
Yeah.
You know, and they dabbled, but they just didn't get as deep into it as I did. But they've kind of stuck by my side the whole time.
That's awesome.
Sometimes from afar, you know, hey, we can't have you here.
The boundaries, right?
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
And I remember being like, you asshole. You know,
Right.
You're kicking me out? What do you mean?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
It's because of those lies we tell ourselves and we start to believe them. You know, it's not my fault.
Yeah. Right.
We had about, I don't know, a month and a half ago or so, we had Randall Carlisle on the show. And he's talking about all his marriages that he's had. And this guy, he's a hoot. He's a riot. And he's sitting over there in that chair that you're in. And he goes, yeah, I've been married 4 times. And he goes, you know, I was thinking every single time it was them bitches' fault.
Yeah.
And then he goes, and then when I got sober, I realized it was my fault,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, because his whole mindset started clearing up and he started really thinking about they're not the ones that was causing the issues. But again, that's our fallback, right? To say I have to do this. It's our justification. We have to justify things, right?
Yeah.
That's why it puts us where we're putting in. And something, John, that you mentioned earlier too is, if you're wanting to get your fix drunk, or you wanted to get stoned or do a line or whatever it was, and you didn't have any money, you'd think of a way that you could do it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You put in that thought too as well, of wanting to get your life on track. You will find a way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like when we had John and Ron and Nick and Ryan on here, you know, and I mean, you look at John and you look at Ron, 20 years, 22 years as the Jazz Bear, 15 years as the monster truck driver for Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
To have that rug whipped right out from underneath you, that was your identity. I had my job for 24 years. That was my identity.
Mm-hmm.
That was me, my gold medal or silver medal, going, shit, check me out. Man, I'm accomplished, right?
Yeah.
I've worked my way up here. To have it ripped out from underneath you, like John said, how do you rebrand yourself? How do you rebuild yourself? You know, and he even asked, he goes, Al, all the people that you have interviewed on the show, there's, yes, his diction, which is a lot different from what he's saying he's gone through, and even Ron. Where do you start? And I told him, I'm like, everyone that I've interviewed, they just made a decision, and they just take one little baby step. That baby step has to be forward, not backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Take a baby step forward. Before you know it, you've got a second baby step forward. Before you know it, you've got a third. As time goes, pretty soon they're not baby steps anymore. Maybe you're stepping more in your normal stride, even though it's maybe one step. But it starts getting better, right? You start getting the right tools. The right people start coming into your life. Things start changing for you. However, you've got to take that frickin' baby step forward to get to wherever it is that you want to go. And sometimes you may not even know where you want to go, right?
Yeah.
After I lost my job, I fell into depression. I was in depression for a while, feeling sorry for myself. Look what I just frickin' did, I lied to my wife for how long? We just got married. She married a guy that finally had a job, a long-term job, and somebody that respected her and loved her, just to turn around a month and a half after we get married, lose his frickin' job. Because he got popped on a piss test, which he promised me he would never do again. So yeah, and it took a lot of soul searching, a lot. And I made the decision, just kind of sometimes when you and I've sat down and talked, Bill, you make that decision. You made a decision of like getting rid of everything you frickin' had just to start somewhere, right? And basically that's kind of what I did. I just started doing some soul searching, going, I wasn't the person who I thought I was. And I don't ever want to be that person. I want to be this type of person, and I'm a true believer that when it comes to bettering ourselves, there's no finish line.
No.
The day the finish line hits is the day they put me in the ground. I will have goals. I'll reach a goal. I'll set another goal. I'm constantly going there. But as far as bettering myself, I will always continue to want to be a better friend, a better husband, a better father, a better papa, whatever.
Just a better human being.
Just a better human being, because it makes my life more manageable, makes me happy, and really, even doing this show, all the people that we're hoping that we're helping and saving, it's my therapy too, man. It's helping me. It's helping me get through what I need to get through.
Yeah. So, it's so true what you're saying though too. I've had an opportunity to work with John on some of those things too, because you and I have talked about it. That was my biggest thing, is when I retired from the Olympics. My identity was the Olympian, going and winning medals, traveling around the world, going to these big events, going to the White House and doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
And when all that stuff ended, I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah, it's like, now what?
Yeah, and I was always told that, if you build it, they will come. And that's what my expectation was, that I went to the Olympics, I did all those things I was supposed to do. Where's the stuff?
Where is it? Yeah,
where's the stuff?
it?
And that's what led me into massive depression and use and all that stuff. And for me, same thing. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start somewhere. And the thing that really resonated with me, well, there's several things that resonated with me, but one of the things that still stands today is that, and you hear people say it all the time, is like, I want to be of service to others. And that comes more from the church, any religion.
Well,
right?
recovery, though, they preach that a lot in recovery. Service. Yeah.
And when you do that, you start to learn lessons and you get rewarded with that. And that helps those baby steps along the way.
Yeah.
Right? So,
A helps B, A gets better.
Yep.
And I really commend you guys for, finding your way on your own. For me, I don't think I would have ever, pulled my head out if it wasn't for a place like the Other Side Academy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to have to correct you on that one.
Yeah.
I didn't find it on my own.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I didn't.
Making those first steps.
It was my higher power that basically, when I looked in the mirror and said, God, please help me.
Yeah.
Of course, when I lost my job, I was like, no, not like this,
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
It led me down that path. Yeah. So I just credit, and it is just for me, that's just how I see it. I credit everything to him, because, I couldn't have done it on my own.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have the strength. I was doing it on my own for how many freaking years, and all I did was F shit up.
Yeah, well,
right? I messed up 3 marriages, I know I could have been a hell of a lot better father. Not saying I was a bad father, but I know I could have been a hell of a lot better father. I could have been a hell of a lot better friend. I mean, apparently, if I was doing things on my own, I wouldn't have had friends come up and say, "Man, we didn't trust you."
Yeah. Right.
So that was my learning point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it took me all the way up until I was in my mid-40s to start figuring it out.
But that's a blessing. Is
but
you
that
still
is
have
still
the opportunity.
Blessing, right?
Yeah.
The blessing is still there, and I want our listeners to understand, man. not all hardships are just their hardship. There's a blessing behind every single frickin' one of them. We just have to open our eyes and remove the veil and look at it. And we really have to, like my friend Nick says, connect the dots backwards.
Yeah.
You connect the dots backwards, you're going to go, son of a bitch, I'm standing on the exact dot I'm supposed to be standing on right here, right now.
Yeah.
You know?
And if I want to echo, I appreciate what you said.
Thank you.
Definitely, I appreciate it. But same thing for me, my awakening, if you will, I was literally to the point where I was like, I'm going to check out this time. And I failed the first time, even though I supposedly shouldn't have failed. And I was like, I'm going to make sure I don't fail this time. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got connected to the world of coaching and mentoring. And the first mentor, who's also a business partner of mine, and we have this global coaching program with CEO space and all that stuff, but blah, 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 is that we started talking about, he says, do you lead a life by design or do you lead a life by default? And we're on a Zoom call with several other people. Mm-hmm. So I'm reflecting to myself, I'm like, oh, my life is definitely default because it is a shit show, right? And he says, well, if you lead a life by default, it's not too late to declutter that bullshit out of your life and rebuild your life by design. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I have another opportunity? Like, are you freaking kidding me?
Right?
Yeah.
And that's like, I've always prayed, right? But with that, with the coaching and mentoring that I got from the most important conversation, which is the group that one of the groups that I'm with, and the commitment to a higher power and accountability, that's what helped me. And I'm sure it's probably not a whole lot different from the other side of addiction. There's the foundational rules and tools that everyone needs to help them get moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Right? So I absolutely didn't do it on my own, not even close, because there was definitely a higher power involved and other people.
Yeah, I guess I
Yeah.
jumped the gun on that.
But no,
well, really.
But it's the way I guess the way we talked about it, right? It's, we didn't go to a formal program specifically for addicts and alcoholics and stuff like that. But
and when you really think about it, like even people that go to the Other Side Academy, they, like you talk about making those baby steps, coming to the Other Side Academy could be their first baby step in the
hell yes,
right direction.
Yeah.
Right? Well, and something got you there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Something got you there.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps because that's just how I see it. Again, he's designed our life. He's given us our options, and we choose a lot of bad options, a shitload of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, he still gives us those choices, right? And then sometimes we get that shot over the bow, and it wakes us up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It really wakes us up. You had your shot over the bow.
Yeah.
It led you
several times.
It led you right to go to the Other Side Academy, and with them being such a great organization, I mean, look at all the amazing things they're doing. I mean, oh my gosh, they're just doing so many things. It's just, I just love everyone there. I mean, seriously, I do. I enjoy being around everyone. I love going out and visiting. I love sitting down and talking with Dave and Robin and everyone that I've met. I've just built some really great relationships. So
yeah, it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah,
especially that new building.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
it's definitely amazing. Yeah, when I went and had a meeting with Dave a couple of weeks ago, I was going up to the old building. I was expecting to go in the old little house, and it said next door. Oh, okay, and went next door, and it's like, oh shit, man, check out your office now. It's not all 1920 shit. But his other office was a beautiful office as well. It's really cool.
It's just really cool to think of how far the academy has come over the years. And I was one of the first. I think I was like 32 on the pop list when I first got there, and so I was able to see it all change. Not only just the outside, I mean tons on the outside. Right?
Yeah.
The new building, we used to have a garden, then we didn't, then we had a garden again, and then we had, all these tree stumps all over the place that we ended up digging out over the years, and just seeing what it looks like today, especially that building, and knowing that the one that we're working on now, which is the main one that you had been to before, it's just going to be just as beautiful. And then hearing you guys talk about, this operation starting up and seeing how much it's changed, it's just crazy.
Yeah. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all of us, right? It's taken all of us. We talked about that with Mary Jo this morning on the morning show from you, Sarah, and it takes all of us, man. We can't do this alone. And the more, like Mary Jo said, the more voices we have getting it out there, the better opportunity and the better chance we have to start even making some changes.
Yeah.
Right? And helping others.
I got a question for you both and for our listeners too, because across the board, there's a lot of things that keeps people who are addicts and alcoholics from starting on that path to recovery, right? And there's a lot of reasons. And one of mine, and I saw this in my parents too, was when I was able to get into a space where I was vulnerable enough to admit it. And my worry, more than anything, was the shame that came along with it. How did you handle that? Because I know with a lot of addicts, especially and alcoholics, it's the shame that will keep them from continuing on that path and worrying about what everyone thinks. Because I had to get to a point where not only vulnerable, but I had to get to a point like I just don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I got to do this for me, and I've got to, I had to find my reasons, myself, my kids, my family, whatever. But like, how did you handle?
I think shame and guilt still plague me, at times, and I'm still working on it. And one thing that I just kind of pay attention to, in AA, you guys talk about take it one day at a time, If I think about today and the things that I've done today, then today, I deserve a good life. So I look at it that way. I work every day, the life is a blessing, and today I deserve it.
Yeah.
We'll see what tomorrow brings. I'm sure I'm going to put enough work into it that I'm going to deserve it again.
Yeah.
But
because my mom, even till the day she died, would just constantly apologize to me. In the conversation, she would apologize 1,000 times.
Yeah.
And I just tell her, like, you don't have to apologize for anything. Like,
yeah. What's crazy is even with our different backgrounds, my parent will still apologize for things too. For kicking me out, and it's like, no, please, like. That you probably saved my life by kicking me.
It needed to be done.
Yeah, I can't blame you.
Yeah.
For me, it was really doing this. In all honesty, starting to do this show because of my wife's addiction, and when I first started sharing my story, I had a friend tell me, having coffee, and he's like, man, you got to share this, people need to hear it. So that I really thought that was the direction I needed to go. We did our event down in St. George last August, the Healing Utah Success Summit. Dave, very, very powerful speaker. I came up to him, after the event, and I said, hey, Dave, when we get back in town, he says, when you get an opportunity, I'd love to sit down with you, and I want your pointers on how I was on stage. And he's like, okay, we'll make it happen. Well, it just happened a couple weeks ago, right? My wife told me this on the way home from St. George in that August. She's like, babe, I think you'd be better on stage if you told your story. And of course, I'm getting all defensive, okay? I'm putting the bricks up. No way. Again, that fear, what people are going to think, what my mom was going to think. Because there's no way in hell I wanted my mom to know the frickin' truth, right? I didn't want to break her heart, especially now because my dad had passed away in February, and I'm thinking, man, this is just going to frickin' add more shit on her plate. She's going to be disappointed in her son, her oldest son. I finally got that meeting with Dave, and he asked me, he goes, are you sure you want my input? And I said, yes, I do. And he goes, okay. And he just, here it is. It's like I laid down on the floor and he just dumped a wheelbarrow full of freaking bricks on me. And then Robin put her bricks on top.
Yeah.
And I took it. I sat and I listened, and I'm like, I freaking asked for this.
Yeah.
It worked. Do my best not to get emotional. It worked perfectly because Robin was my guest co-host that day. Our guest didn't show up for the Zoom, even though the night before she said she'd be here. I hope she's okay because I still haven't heard from her. I hope she didn't get in an accident or anything. But yeah, we're sitting here and Robin goes, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I guess it's time. So for me, it was almost like it was freaking planned. It was planned, and after we did the show, Robin comes over and she gives me this big hug and she goes, I know you couldn't see it, but I could. And she says, it was like I was just watching all this shit just melt off your shoulders, not realizing I was packing that shit around as long as I was packing it around. My wife walked in during the show and she just like, her frickin' chin hit the floor. She's like, holy shit, he's sharing his story. She didn't think it would ever come. The blessings, I know I'll get emotional on this one. The blessings that have come out of this.
I'm so happy for you inside
right
now,
right?
Because I know where this is.
Yeah.
It's coming again.
The blessings that have come out of this. So, a week ago, I'm at work. My phone rings. I look down. It's my daughter. It's my oldest daughter. I answer it. I said, hey, sweetie, what's up? She goes, hey, Dad. What's going on? I'm like, oh, I'm just sitting here at work. And she goes, okay. She goes, I need to talk to you about something. I says, all right. And my oldest and daughter, we've always had this connection. We've always been able to be honest with one another. And she goes, you're not going to like where the first part of this conversation is going to go. She let me know right up front. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen here? And she goes, when you started your podcast, I wanted to do everything I could to support you. And she goes, and I did. I was listening to your podcast, and she goes, it's really cool what you're doing. And she goes, as time went, she goes, I wanted to support your podcast, but I wanted to stop supporting you. Again, spread my freaking legs. And I'm going, oh my hell, my own freaking daughter is, and she goes, this is the reason why. You've interviewed all these people, talk about addiction. You've shared your story. She's been to a luncheon where I got up and spoke at a chamber luncheon. And she goes, and you've played the victim. And she goes, yes, you were a victim, but you played that victim to the T. And she goes, I found myself getting mad at you because I knew your story. My daughter knew what happened. She called me out on it. And I wasn't going to lie to my daughter. No way in hell I was going to lie to her. And she goes, I just watched your episode. And she goes, I watched it 3 times. And she goes, I am so proud of you. Holy shit. I was like, I'm the parent telling my kids how proud I am of them. And here's my daughter telling me she's proud of me.
Yeah.
It was that perfect time, so, and now that I've done it, it's like I've been cleansed, right?
You took that military 100-pound backpack off
right.
And left it at the front door.
I left it at the front door.
Yeah.
And like my friend Laban told one of our other friends, no one can hold that freaking shit over my head because I came out. It's told. No one can say, I'm going to tell people this is what you did.
Right.
You know what? It's gone.
It's really difficult when you own up to your own shit for other people to put you down because you're like, I just told you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
But then the again, like we talked earlier in the show, the weight that is lifted off, because it's really easy to talk about other people. It's really easy to talk about other people's stories.
Yeah.
But when you get to become in that space where you're vulnerable, and that's what I really want, like, and I'm glad that as I asked that question, it really played out with you, especially because when you're on this show and this is your show, you've got to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
period.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I shared little teeny bits,
right?
About a gnat load.
But the value, and this is not like for listeners, you can't go out and tell people that that are dealing with addiction, alcohol. You can't tell them. Right. You have to be vulnerable. But if and when they get to that place, the value is the release of all of the guilt that you've been holding on to.
Yeah.
Right? And that's same thing with me. I did mine. Mine was more specifically about my suicide and my depression. And I did it at what's his name's house in Holiday, the big home, Dave.
Oh, Dave? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he had a big event there, and he's like, you need to talk about it. I'm like, hell no. I'm not talking about my depression, and I committed suicide, or I tried to commit suicide, and I did, and I was in tears. I mean, you've seen me speak.
Yeah.
I was in tears the whole time, and I was like, I just ruined it. But then when I went outside out back, one person after another came up, and they were just like, oh my God, we're so glad that you were vulnerable enough, because I got a story just like yours.
Yeah, right.
and I never thought it was okay to talk about it. But
Yeah.
you're Bill the Olympian, and if you talk about it, I feel like it's okay for me to talk about it. And so there's so much power on you just opening up and being vulnerable about your own story that literally is that ripple effect that can impact the lives of so many people around you.
Yeah, vulnerability embraces vulnerability.
Yeah.
And really, we don't take accountability for our own actions if we don't get vulnerable. I had a couple times at the Other Side Academy where we kind of did this, you know, I was lucky enough to have Dave be there for both times, and talk about my story and be vulnerable, open up, tell some things that I'd never said before or never told anybody before. And it was really hard for me because I didn't want to, and I had buried it for so long. And but I remember telling my story kind of like you were talking about, from a victim standpoint, you know, for some of it, and then all of a sudden I'm this big hard criminal, you know, going to prison, and now I'm a badass. You know, so it went from being a victim to being a badass. And both of those stories, both of those stories weren't the real truth.
Right.
And I remember Dave getting in my ass and being like, you know, first when I was a victim, like, did you not think about what I did to my mom? Like I shared a little bit earlier, what I've done to my dad, you know, what I've done to all of my family and even my so-called friends, you know. And then as I was a badass, you know, okay, you're a badass, but think about, you know, there's one time I had broken into this person's garage and took money out of the car, and I didn't think it was necessarily bad because I didn't see anybody, you know, but it was pointed out that, okay, you're a badass, you did this, but that person's scarred for life.
Oh, you put the fear of God in them.
Yeah. Now they got to double check their garage door is locked, they got to double check their car is locked, and I just didn't think about that before, you know, especially obviously I'm in my addiction, you know, but seeing the truth and realizing that I would have never really looked at it that way if I didn't get vulnerable.
Yeah. That's awesome, man.
We all need to. Well, guys, man, I tell you what, this has been a hell of a show. This has been great. So, again, thank you to both of you for coming on the show, man.
Yeah,
thank you for making the call today.
Yeah, okay. Well, again, like I told you when I called him, like, man, your name just kept popping in my head, you know, and I'm like, okay, frick, I'm going to call him. And so it all worked out. Is there one last thing here, John, that you'd like to share with our listeners, something that you think would be very powerful for them to grab? And if you do, look at them in that camera, man. I want them to feel it.
Yeah, you know, I think we kind of touched on, or the biggest thing was that doing the hard thing and the right thing are the same thing. And I just want to challenge everybody to do that. You know, wake up in the morning, whether you're addicted to something or whether you're not, you know, just say, I'm going to do something hard today, and keep doing that every day. And you'll be surprised where things, you know, where your life's direction is headed after that.
Yeah.
Great message. Bill, you got something you want to share?
Always, man. I always have something to share.
I think I'm the same way.
You know, on this crazy journey of my life, you know, I've been so blessed to have experienced some of the shittiest moments of life. Because those shitty moments are things that I've learned from, right? And a few years back, I created, I'm a big quote guy. I create all my own quotes. But I created a quote like this, and I hope you guys, you know, take this in, process it. But it goes like this: dreams are only dreams unless we take the actions to ignite them. So what actions are you willing to take today to change your tomorrow?
I love it. Yeah, that's perfect. Because that's the only way it's going to happen, right? Yeah. We want everything to come easy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come easy. You know, we all want a miracle pill that's going to help us go from being overweight to thin. You know, I wish I could join a gym and just go there and get on the treadmill and look at all the pretty girls walking around and build myself up. You know, that would be great. But again, it doesn't happen. It takes time. You've got to go through the process. So, guys, again, man, thank you so much for being here. It's just a kick-ass show. This was really, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robin, thank you for hooking me up with John, man. Greatly appreciate it. You're our sweetheart, that's for sure. Again, guys, man, thank you to all our listeners, all our sponsors, all our incredible guest co-hosts, Resilience Talk Network. None of this would be possible if it wasn't for you guys. We just continue to grow. We got a lot of cool things that we're looking at doing down the road. It just takes a little time, baby steps, but we're not moving backwards, so that's a good thing. Sometimes we might be in neutral, but damn it, we're not moving backwards. Remember this, guys, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.